Chapter 6, Echeloned Depth Interviews, Strategically Mining Customer Potential. How much untapped potential lies within your existing customer base? For most companies, the current customer base is a significant percentage of existing revenue. It can also be a key to accelerated growth and turnaround. Using a third party to conduct depth interviews with customers is de rigueur for the strategic thinking process. And if you aren't having depth interviews conducted with customers, your company is missing out on one of the most valuable aspects of a full strategy process. Depth interviews can play a key role in fostering innovation, garnering untapped sales, and helping to differentiate your company in the marketplace. Finding the potential within your top customer relationships is one of the most valuable and high ROI efforts your business can invest in. But too often, divining that potential is left to the selling efforts of business development, sales, and service teams that lack the ability to uncover the full value of customer relationships. You may have qualified individuals on your team who could conduct depth interviews with customers, but the very fact that they are part of the organization that they are analyzing can taint the objectivity of the process and the fullness of input from the customers. What depth interviews are and are not. Depth interviews are basically guided one-on-one conversations conducted by a third party to gather insights about what the customer values and what the customer perceives about you and your competition. Ideally, they should be conducted face-to-face with open time limits, but they can effectively be conducted on the phone when time is of essence. After introducing myself, I segue into depth interviews I'm conducting with my clients' customers, usually by saying, I'm conducting an innovation and service improvement initiative for my client, and they have retained our company to gather insights from their best customers as to what is most important to the customers and how they view my client's performance, and where my client could innovate the next improvements that might dynamically improve customers' situations. Nearly all of those we contact are delighted to invest the time and greatly appreciate the fact that their opinion is being valued so highly. The process cements good customer relationships. Depth interviews are not used to conduct any direct selling, although new sales potentials usually are a result. They are not quantitative surveys gathering tedious rankings, scales, or grades from the customer on your past performance. Although you may occasionally ask for some measures, the questions you will have created for a depth interview will not require gathering much hard, quantifiable data. The limitations of traditional interviewing techniques. Sales and service teams. It is true that your sales and service teams are motivated to sell additional products and services, but they are rarely incentivized to innovate the products, services, or methodologies of the business. They aren't motivated or empowered to look for what could lead to much greater growth than the stepped sales improvements on which they focus. They often lack the savvy to discuss areas of a strategic nature or the macro picture of the customer and industry. And they may lack the political abilities or awareness about their organization to know just what your company's potentials for innovation and improvement are. Customers are often reluctant to give sales reps information that can be used as ammunition against them in pricing negotiations. Customers are frequently more tight-lipped with salespeople than anyone else, even if the relationship is relatively healthy. The insiders on your team will also lack objectivity compared to what an outsider can bring to the discussion with your customers. Focus groups. Because of the handcuffs that are on most sales and service staff, oftentimes, focus groups and classic qualitative research are used to assess service levels and other areas of concern. But focus groups force customers to only share the information they have no fear of sharing publicly. However, the most valuable information for innovation and discovering incremental sales within a customer relationship is usually of a confidential nature. The challenges that lie within these relationships are not the things that most people would feel comfortable discussing publicly. Marketing researchers lament how often focus groups result in a groupthink and are often dominated by the strong personalities within each group. Surveys. Voice of customer, qualitative interviews, or other similar surveys can do an excellent job of assessing service levels and customer concerns. The problem lies in the savvy that the interviewers may or may not have, as well as the objectives of the qualitative research. Interviewers rarely have the combination of sales, strategy, and innovation savvy that can enable them to parlay information into more significant incremental sales results. The objectives of qualitative research are typically not focused on uncovering the incremental sales and innovation potential in the relationships and overall market. Usually, qualitative research is used to assess past performance levels and test new product ideas that are already developed. The ideal interviewer. What is needed to uncover the fullest potential of the customer relationship is a set of skills, experience, and foci that allows the maximization of your partnership with the customer. Skills for asking questions that assess the overall strategy, specific areas of objectives, and the vision of the potential of your customer relationships and other innovations. The interviewer ideally should have experience and savvy in speaking with the C-level executives of all sizes of customer companies as well as your own team. The interviewer must have the ability to express the objective of taking the existing relationship from its current level to a much larger partnership for mutual objectives. They need to be able to focus on the customers' and stakeholders' ideal outcomes that might lead to growth in value, revenues, and profits from your relationship, not just for your company, but for all the stakeholders in the partnership. The goal is to expand the pie for all, not just get a bigger piece. Qualitative interviews focus on the results of the past and not the potentials of the future. Too often, even the more experienced consultants and marketing staff focus on assessing past successes and shortcomings. Sometimes, because of a lack of experience in selling, management, strategy, and innovation, qualitative researchers are not as savvy at asking the essential questions that uncover the potentials of the relationship. Depth interviews should aim to elicit information from a customer quantifying the value of potential results. Another theme that must be included in facilitating quality depth interviews is that of fostering innovation-oriented conversation. It is rare for customers to think too far beyond the paradigm and perceived restrictions of the relationship. Therefore, a discussion that is focused on potentials and blue sky innovative thinking needs to be facilitated through depth interviews. Taking a customer down a path 3 years into the future, on a road where the customer can clearly envision the untapped potentials that exceed current expectations, this is the type of discussion seldom facilitated yet most needed. Too often we are more concerned with surveys that measure performance or selling or servicing to meet this quarter's quota. In discerning whom to engage to facilitate true depth interviews and how to unlock the fuller potential of customer relationships, there are several factors to consider. Does he have the experience in consultative questioning, selling, and the ability to dollarize potential value? Will she be able to take the findings of untapped sales potential back to the sales and service team of varying abilities and coach them on the implementation and realization of these newfound potentials? Is he savvy not just in discussing strategy, but also in assisting executives in clarifying previously unthought of objectives and potentials? Does she have the acumen to draw out these discoveries from the customer, as well as then facilitate the formulation of any strategies needed by the leadership team of your company? Is he knowledgeable at developing innovation programs and processes? Does she have the ability to take amorphous ideas and couch them with specific measurable activities that are calendarized with clear points of accountability and follow-up? Is he not only a good written communicator, but also effective at vocally relaying the findings to large groups who will not only need to be apprised of the findings, but of the strategies necessary to follow through upon them? To justify the investment and optimize the process of depth interviews, you should begin by looking at the untapped potential of your top existing customers, especially newer customers who may hold greater growth potential. You don't need an exhaustive list to get started, but a list that is representative. What many of our clients discover is that the retention or expansion of just one good customer more than pays for the investment of retaining our services or anyone's services and the time invested in the depth interview process. Whom to interview? We suggest interviewing 3 customer groups: champion customers, high growth potential customers, and lost customers. The champions will give us excellent testimonials and insights into competitive advantage for our client, and these insights and testimonials will help in marketing and sales efforts as well as with positioning, how our clients can differentiate themselves in the marketplace. The high growth potential customers will usually give insights as to what it will take to win more of their business. From these high growth potential customers, we can glean marketing and selling themes that can be leveraged throughout the customer base. This is where the effort more than pays for itself. In fact, we have seen the depth interview process help to bring about 9-figure returns for companies below $500 million in total revenue. Finally, interviewing a sampling of lost customers helps to uncover opportunities for prevention as well as potentials for recovery. Once you've compiled a target list for interviews, amalgamate the estimated potential and set objectives for the process. This will help to ensure follow-through on potential innovations and sales. You will want to strategically identify the specific contacts within each customer company who have the most gravitas and influence in your relationship. Ideally, they are within the decision-maker team or are the approvers of that team's recommendations. You want to choose interviewees who stand to gain the most from your innovations and the deepening of the partnership. They will be most engaged and open to the process. What to ask? You'll want to create a map of discussion areas regarding your customer views on areas like the following: what they like or dislike about your sales process or service, what they like or don't like about your competition, how you compare to the competition, their dollar quantification of value for the services you provide them, what would cause them to leave, their additional needs relative to and sometimes just beyond the scope of your relationship, their problems or top constraints to growth, their ballpark on the dollarized value lost or gained based upon the potential innovations in service, products, and relationship, the economic result of accelerating progress toward their mission-critical objectives, how does improving their performance and what they've identified as their own critical success factors for their mission-critical objectives increase their revenues. Where are they having problems, not just with your company, but in general? How you could better work together to improve their performance. Their top considerations in buying additional services or products. Use depth interviews to improve your positioning and competitive awareness. Most people in marketing, sales, and company leadership are grossly unaware of how their customers view them and the competition. Fostering awareness of your positioning points of uniqueness, advantage, equality, and weakness improves your ability to effectively position your company and increase customer retention. What follows is a way to set up a process of continually improving competitive awareness and understanding your business's positioning points, both of which marketing and sales departments need in order to effectively position your company. Differentiating yourself in the marketplace, positioning for accelerated growth. A frequently asked question from business leadership is, how do we define and communicate our difference in the aspects about our mission that are unique? And from that question, is there anything that really is unique about one business as opposed to another? The tool we use to help our clients understand how they differ in the marketplace, as well as how to better sell and market their competitive advantage, is something we call the Positioning Points Grid. The grid will require input from your team and customers. Building it and maintaining it turns it into a process that helps to foster competitive awareness. Every company has a mix of positioning points that define how it is better, similar to, or worse than the alternative choices for a customer. We call these positioning points of uniqueness, advantage, equality, and weakness. Part of your initial work is to compile a list of your competition and competitive alternatives. You may know of most of your competitors, but the truest lens through which to see your competitors is through that of your customers. Regularly asking customers who and what are the alternatives to your solutions is something most sales reps fear doing. Yet the exercise is powerful and will increase selling effectiveness. Make this a regular part of your depth interview process. Often companies have competitors or alternatives that are different options at their own company, one of which is to keep things as they are. In this case, what is needed is a full listing of your customers' most commonly chosen options, in addition to options at alternative companies. The more competitively aware you are and your team is, the more effective you become at targeting, questioning, qualifying, positioning, and ultimately closing more business with better profit margins. Next, you will want to begin filling out the grid by asking your team these questions. What do we offer the customer that no one else offers? Your points of competitive uniqueness. What do we offer that is demonstratively better than the competition? Your points of competitive advantage. Where are we equal with our competitors? Your points of equality. And finally, what are our weaknesses that may hinder our offering to the customer? Your points of competitive weakness. Be honest about what points qualify for what label. Is having the best widget in the industry a point of uniqueness? Of course not. It might be an advantage, but only if you can prove it and if the quality of being the best is of value to the customer. You may in fact be a commodity business in which being the best is hindering your price competitiveness and thus produces a competitive weakness. The power behind the grid is that you can eventually reposition most of your weaknesses as advantages if you can define the right markets and resulting customer value. Many companies claim to have a host of unique advantages, but in reality, unique advantages of a product or service are rare. There are combinations of points that can make for a unique package, but it is important to use the words unique and only very accurately. When a company does have a genuine competitive uniqueness, it can become the holy grail of closing business. When you've appropriately questioned prospects for their needs and a prospect has expressed a dollar value for your unique offering, and that value exceeds your incremental price, game over. The prospect cannot negotiate on price and you have the sale. The problem is that too many sales reps spill their areas of uniqueness and advantages up front, and a willing buyer plays coy for the sake of negotiation. The key is building tools that get your team to question first and present relative positioning points when appropriate, as we'll discuss later in the book. Advantages are most powerful when you not only confirm the need, but also have an incontrovertible proof of your advantage's reality and value. Again, many companies are overly optimistic about what offerings of theirs are advantages in the eyes of the customer. The more honest you are in this phase, the easier it will be when you engage customers in filling out the grid. Points of competitive equality are important to make note of and can have a strategic benefit in sales and marketing efforts. Calling out an equality can help to neutralize the selling and marketing efforts of less savvy competitors that are touting them as advantages. This tactic brings more attention to your true provable points of advantage. The downgrading technique can also be an effective sales and marketing tactic you can use if you know your grid points. This is where you strategically choose to take an advantage or even a uniqueness and downgrade it to an equality. In one instance, we had a client that had a unique money-back guarantee in a high-dollar software industry. Competitors lied outright, saying that they had a similar guarantee, but we wouldn't call them out on it without losing credibility. Instead, we created a tactic of explaining to prospects in the final phases of the decision-making process that all good competitors have a no-risk implementation guarantee, and that you'll know that you have the right competitors in the final rounds by the fact that they have pointed out this specific clause in their contract. Here's ours. And again, we see this as a competitive equality that probably everyone making it to this round will clearly show you in their presentation. When those words were uttered, you could just read the eyes in the room that we had struck a blow. The closing rates of that client shot through the roof. Points of competitive weakness can often be repositioned as chosen weaknesses that actually highlight the competitive advantage of your offering. For example, you may have the highest price. This is something that you will want to allude to early and often in selling and marketing efforts, but reposition it with the fact that the higher price enables greater R&D, service levels, or quality, which accounts not just for the difference in price, but the entire investment within so many months versus the competition, which actually has a much higher cost of ownership throughout the lifetime of the relationship. There is power to confessing weaknesses up front and repositioning them as necessary. It tends to build credibility in your marketing and sales communication. During a turnaround, there are bound to be weaknesses that need to be confessed and repositioned. The positioning points grid will help you to keep communications focused and effective, and it also shows customers that you are not hiding the facts, but rather are offering a more informed and competitively advantageous decision. After you've created a version 1 of your positioning points grid with your team, use the depth interview process to involve your customers and gather their input. Behind every positioning point, we recommend you build these bullets: the benefit, dollarized value, and proof. You can begin your first versions of the grid with guesses as to the benefits, dollarized value, and proofs behind each positioning point. You will be filling these points in eventually with the results of research in your depth interviews. The benefit bullets help to keep your sales and marketing efforts on the results that customers buy. Customers want a job accomplished with your solution, and yet we get too caught up with the facts about the hammer as opposed to how well it helps to hang pictures or lay a roof. Ultimately, what can be the most persuasive messaging and positioning effort is capturing and proving the incremental value, or more specifically, the profit that you can bring to your customer's bottom line. When your team can effectively get customer buy-in to the incremental profits they will realize through your points of competitive uniqueness or advantage, you can effectively demand higher pricing and you will have the advantage. The most effective proofs are testimonials. Testimonials have the most impact when they are short, benefits-focused, and include the customer's perception of the dollars they gained because of buying from you. We help clients get these testimonials through the depth interview process. Testimonials have even more impact when photos of the customer and ideally even phone numbers or emails are included. Being that the use of testimonials have become so prevalent and some are not legitimate, putting the phone number and other contact info on there helps to ultimately improve the credibility of the testimonial. Creating your positioning points grid will build your team's competitive awareness and their confidence. When these positioning points are discussed, your team will not only be more focused, but more effective at communicating your difference in the marketplace during their marketing, qualification, and closing efforts. The document should be reviewed and updated quarterly in conjunction with your depth interview process efforts and other steps in the strategy process. Eventually, your top management will be using the positioning points grid as you make strategic decisions about your targeted market standing and share, as well as other key objectives we discussed in Chapter 3. Capture new customer share with face-to-face C-level interviews. You may be in a situation that hiring a third party to facilitate the depth interview process is not currently feasible. In that case, you may choose from several internal positions for this effort. In addition to the qualifications mentioned earlier, you will want to look at the following considerations. Customers will tend to open up more with a higher level authority within your company. Whereas there are always exceptions, usually the COO will garner more information and be more objective than the VP of sales. Even members of some boards of directors or advisors could be a good substitute for a third party. Ideally, the president, CEO, or owners make for excellent facilitators of a certain number of depth interviews. The titular head of a company has an uncanny ability to bond with, impress, and open up the communication with the company's best customers. I have coached many a president and owner on the questioning and depth interview process with great success. But even when a company is using a third party for depth interviews, I exhort the top management to consistently be a part of a minimum number of customer depth interviews. It is far too easy for customer relationships to become overly comfortable, and wrong assumptions can mount up on both sides. The depth interview process not only increases your team's competitive awareness, but it also captures untapped sales potentials and increases your customer retention. Just as conducting the right depth interviews with the right customers has helped so many others, this process could help you to find untapped billions within your customer base.